me. Now this time, Divine Mother, I will play the naughty baby. I will sob unceasingly. No more toys of earthly pleasure shall stop my cries. O Divine Mother, thou with Beth come soon, or I will wake all creation with my cries. All thy sleeping children will wake and join me in a chorus of wails. Forsake the busyness of the housework of thy creation. I demand attention. I demand thee. I demand thee, and not playthings. And from Swami Kriyananda's The Path, this is drawn from the chapter Paramahansa Ananda. There was a devotee, Master once told us, who was sitting before the image of his guru, chanting and casting flowers onto it as an expression of his devotion. His concentration became so deep that suddenly he beheld the whole universe contained within his own consciousness. "Oh," he cried, "I've been placing flowers on another's image, and now I see that I, untouched by this body, am the sustainer of the universe. I bow to myself." And he began to throw flowers onto his own head. Oh, when Master Sri Yukteswar told me that story, I was so thrilled I went into samadhi. That devotee wasn't speaking from ego. Rather, he was rejoicing in the death of his ego. This was a relationship Master sought ever to establish with us, a relationship wherein we realize with our entire being that we too were that. Leo Cox, one of the younger monks, used to take photographs of Master whenever he could. The walls of his room became plastered over with them. "Why do you keep on taking photographs of this physical form?" Master demanded of him one day. "What is this but flesh and bones? Get to know me in meditation if you want to know who I really am." And once when we were serving him, he remarked, "You are also kind to me with your many attentions." Karl Frost, one of the disciples present, exclaimed, "Oh no, Master, it is you who are kind to us." "God is helping God," Master replied with a sweet smile. That is the nature of his cosmic drama. Many years ago, we used to go to Swami's Dome in Northern California, there at the Crystal Hermitage. And it was primarily monks and nuns and a few others, and something, of course, that we looked forward to very much. And we never knew what was going to be the situation there. Sometimes he was in silence, and he would have Jyotish perhaps read one of the books that he was working on at the time. Other times there'd be kirtans and meditation talks and so forth. Well, this one particular time he surprised us when he said that he had a book he wanted to read to us. And the book is Letters by a Modern Mystic. I would urge you to read it. It's absolutely fabulous. And it's about a man who Swami Kriyananda did meet, and a very saintly man in Davis, California, when this saintly soul was in his later years. And he said to Swami, I'm dying of a dread disease. And Swami, of course, was all compassion and inquired what it was. And he said smilingly, old age. And so these letters by a modern mystic have a very interesting story behind them. When he went, Frank Laveau, when he went as a missionary to the Philippines, though he had a family, he was by himself. And he became very lonely, extremely so. And rather than becoming despondent and perhaps writing to his superiors and saying, That's enough for me. Take me home. He thought to take advantage of this experience and turn it around. And he began to have conversations with God. And he began to embark on a very bold experiment, which maybe he hadn't even heard about, which was to encourage God and to pray to God to work through him. So that as he was doing his chores, whether he was writing on the typewriter or whatever it was, he, with a tremendous will, he did everything he could to put his own self, his little self, to the side, encouraging God to work through him. And in the beginning, he said, with a tremendous effort and even a bit of strain, he could begin to feel that God was working through him perhaps an hour a day. And he was very happy for that. But of course, he wanted more. And as time went on, he found, as he talked about in these letters, a joy broken loose. I've never forgotten that, because that's what we want our joy to do, to break loose and to begin to fill us. We get tastes of this joy. If we didn't, we wouldn't be here. We'd be running around with all the playthings, as we read in this poem. But now we've become the naughty baby, all of us. And we're saying, enough of these playthings. We want to get back home. And back home is joy, because joy is God, and God is joy. And so he began to feel this joy. And the amazing thing is, there in the Philippines, they didn't know quite what to think of him. He was a bit of an oddity. But as he became wrapped in this vibration of spirit, they began to be very attracted to him and consider him and call him a man of God, which he truly was. And these letters that he wrote to his father and others, they are so powerful and so filled with spirit that many times as I would read them, I just have to stop. And that's a good scripture. That's what the autobiography of a yogi did for me when I just got on the path. I would read a few pages and go into meditation, and I didn't even know what meditation was. And I'd come out of this state and I think, my God, what was that? And then I'd read a few more pages, and then I'd go into meditation again. Well, that's this kind of book. It has that kind of power, because when you have, and really they're scriptures, when you have these books that are just saturated with God, then they're a tremendous help on the spiritual path. There's many, many aids, as we well know, and books such as these are very, very helpful. Nayaswami Catherine, who's been around and on for many, many years, she was raised by missionary parents, and she told us one time, much to our delight, that she had once, or maybe on numerous occasions, which I think, had spent time with Frank Laveau in various situations where he would be, speaking to crowds and so on. And one time he was asked to say a prayer, and she, being very observant, shared with us something that I've never forgotten. She said that the prayer that he said really was just an outer expression of the inner dialogue that she perceived was going on at all times. That's how natural it was. Shall I say a prayer? Okay. Out it came. And when you have that, then it reminds us of Master one time when he was challenged. Can you produce inspiration at will? And he said, yes, take down this poem. It's a beautiful poem in Whispers from Eternity about doors opening everywhere. And very interestingly, some years later, an editor, I believe he was out of England, said, I've read this book and it's so beautiful, but I can't help but want to extract this particular poem and put it in my article for the readers. And it was that one. I thought, no coincidences in this universe, in this world. As a reminder to us that that's what we want to be able to do at all times. Take down this poem. Draw then from the inspiration. And so what we're trying to do in our lives, and it really takes creativity and it takes a certain boldness, is to ask, as we like to at Ananda, what's trying to happen here? Very, very good question to ask, not only for our inner life, but our outer life as well. What is trying to happen here? And I remember in the early years, I got tripped up so often, I just felt like a fool when I would find a chant, which was very common for me, and I would be chanting this chant. All of a sudden, it would just leave me out in the desert. And I had been inspired by this chant for weeks, and I'd fire it up again, and there was nothing. And I thought, how are we ever going to find God? I thought this was it. I just keep on chanting this, and into the light I go, and finally I found, I wasn't particular. Anything would do. Just give me a vehicle, and off we go. And it happened again and again, and it still happens. Again and again and again. And finally I said, okay, there's no question of the mischievous nature of God. I won't be able to understand this. That will have to come in time. When I talk to Mr. God and say, excuse me, but I do have a few questions. And what was this, I'd have a chant and then he would disappear, and I'd say an affirmation and then he would go up and smoke. And what was that? And no doubt there won't be any need to answer these questions. There's no question about it. Because when we're in God, we are God. Ye two are gods, as it says in the Bible. All questions will be answered. And we get a clue of that when we're with souls such as Swami Kriyananda. And we would come in, very common for many people, with a truckload of questions, hoping to nab him after the satsang, or perhaps it was a questions and answer session that was part of the satsang. We would say, okay, good, I hope I'm not too greedy, but I've got all these questions. And then his vibration, and this is the power of the saints, would sweep away, unbeknownst to us, all these questions. And then leaving, perhaps we would, harbor a little bit of mild frustration. These were such gripping questions. I even wrote a few of them down, and here it is, and I've forgotten all of them. And then we learned the needed lesson, that this is why we came. This is why we came to the satsang. This is why we came on retreat, on pilgrimage, and in meditation, and all the things that we do, to be washed and cleansed of all of this. And yes, these things seem so pressing at the time, but it's not pressing when joy comes. Joy takes over. It's not pressing when peace comes, when contentment comes, when God comes. Then it's all washed away. And that's what we want. And so for us, it's really a matter of keeping our sadhana and all of those things that propel us forward on the spiritual path. They keep it fresh and alive. And one of the arts, you might say, of this is to keep our inspiration alive when there's no inspiration. Now that takes some doing. That really does take love, unconditional love, where we trust that God is playing. Look what God did to Rajarsi Janakananda, the most advanced disciple of Yogananda's. Just days before he was free, fully free, all the light and the visions he was having of the gurus was withdrawn from him. And it really, really created tremendous turmoil. It was a test of tests. And he held his ground. And then the light formed, and he went into the light and he was done. And I thought to myself many times, isn't it interesting that he not only had that experience, but that experience was something that we have in, I believe it's Durga's book, one of, again, very saintly souls who Master had asked to help Rajarsi Janakananda this ecstatic saint in his later years in any way that she possibly could. And she did, of course, a magnificent job. So I believe in her book, she had written down this experience. And it's for us, really, though that was a very peak experience, it's for us when God withdraws. Because that is a time that can be wasted, where we either shake our fist, where, that's kind of a knee-jerk reaction. Listen, I'm kind of tired of tests, and I was thinking, how about if we just grow through joy? I wanted to share that with you, Mr. God, and see if you like that idea. I've had enough of all of this tapas and shutting the heart down and clouding the mind and everything. But, when we finally come back to this world, we realize that the testing cycle, this is from Divine Mother, it's never a withdrawal of love. And so we begin to think in terms of how many ways, especially during these dry periods, how many ways we can endure with faith, how we can be the naughty baby, so that we can keep that vision of that great saint who at one point in ecstasy said, "What am I doing?" What an amazing experience. Offering these flowers on this mirror image, I bow to the soul within, and was then casting flowers on his own head. No one could do this from ego consciousness. It just couldn't be done. It could only be done in a superconscious and ecstatic state. And so these conversations that we talked about, that Frank Laveau was having continuously with God, and Swami Kriyananda in his later years shared with us, that really he was to the point where every thought that he had was Master's thought. And I think, I just have to keep meditating on these things. One time, regards another thing to meditate on, we were at Swami's house in Gurgaon, and he said to me, "I have a lazy streak." And I was just shocked. I didn't know what to think. And I said, "Swami, I'll have to meditate on that." And we both laughed. I thought, if you have a lazy streak, with your 140 books and 400 compositions, and all of the list is long of all the accomplishments that he has pulled off in this world, if you have a lazy streak, I don't even want to begin to introspect and see where I stand in all of this. My God. So there are all of these surprises on the path. Regards conversations with God, coming back to that. Once a day, once a week, throughout the day, once a month, as you feel, because we're both personal and impersonal, personal and impersonal. Sometimes that's all we want to do is share with God, it was a nice day today, thank you. I really needed it. I really, really needed it. It was just, smooth. I walked out from the mall and there was the rickshaw, and it wasn't one of the young guys that speed along and you wonder if you're going to get to your destination in one piece. It was one of the old guys, and he was just, putting along really slowly, and he knew his way, and it was just great, and so on and so forth. Thank you for my day. Thank you for all the little things and all the things that occurred both inwardly and outwardly. And other times when it's been hard, we can talk to God and say, this was a pretty tough day today, and thank you that I'm still on the path, because this kind of bombardment is tough. And some people, with this kind of testing, their faith in God can be shaken. Thank you for keeping me steady. There's times when I feel that, when will God come? When will God come? And I'll say, well, you should be pretty happy that you showed up for sadhana this morning. That's a grace of God. Don't take that for granted. Don't take any of these whispers from the soul for granted. Don't take when your conscience speaks to you and said, you should be doing this. It's time for reform. Don't take that for granted. Absolutely all of these things come from God. Make no mistake about it. And so it would be a very good habit, if it's not already formed for us, to talk with God. He's the nearest of the dear, the nearest of the near, the dearest of the dear. And we don't have to be thinking, as Yogananda shared very humorously, some people think God is a pampered lady. And, we could, only go to God in all of this awe and with a petition and all of these things. That is so far from who God really is. When Yogananda was asked one time, is God personal? He said, of course he's personal. He's become everyone. He's become everything. And so, in our nature, sometimes it's impersonal. We just feel like spending time in the light, wonderful. Other times, we are very much feeling that human, in tune with our human nature. And that's the time, and it's a very sweet time and very heart-opening, when we could talk with God and say, I haven't shared this with you for a while, but I want to thank you for what you have been doing for a friend of mine, or for my brothers and sisters or something. I really, really, really was hoping that they were going to get a break, and it came from you. Thank you. And all of a sudden, something so simple that was there anyway, and that is expressed, there's this feeling that God is present, and that He doesn't need, for us to come out with, our scroll and cheer this and that. He wants to have us engaged. And that's why I've always appreciated Master's teachings. We should go about life in a state of amused detachment. I find that just thrilling. Because if we're amused, then we don't have to go to the mirror and, as Yogananda recommended, get our smiles up because we're walking around a little too grave. We're amused. And in India, if we're not amused in India, we're not amused anywhere. This is an amusement park. And no admission required, Just you pop on through the door and you're amused. And it's wonderful. And that amusement is not something superficial. It is animated with joy. And that's the power of this country. I was just reading Master's beautiful poem on My India. And that, of course, was the last poem that he shared, an extract, before he passed back in March 7th of 1952 in Los Angeles. And it's so beautiful, him sharing that this India I love, this is where I first found God, he says. And that he would welcome the opportunity to come back again and again and again to drink in the vibration of this precious, precious soil, my India. And so for us, really it's a matter of, as Master said of his own disciples, that they're natural. That's all that we have to keep in mind. And if we get ourselves out of tune, then a very good mantra is relax. I was using it the other day and I found it very profound. Relax, relax, relax. And as I was sharing it initially, my voice was a little, gruff. Not that I was saying it outwardly, but I could feel kind of relax, relax. And I thought, oh, gee, that doesn't kind of fit with, I thought, well, I know, but it's all directional. It's going to go somewhere. And in time, then that vibration softened. Relax, relax. And what was that about? Because I was forgetting to be amused. And I was forgetting to be detached. And so, really, for us, we need to be the naughty baby. We need to demand that God and Guru come to us. And at the same time, know that really our true reality is the reality of that saint throwing flowers on his own head. And so, in that way, then we can stay in balance. Because this world is fighting balance. There's no question about it. It's just talked about constantly because it's a real, real issue, a real, real problem. For the yogi, it's not that difficult. Balance is knowing who we are and where we're going. That's it, period. Then you're in balance. When we forget who we are and we forget where we're going, we're out of balance. That's it. It can't be any simpler than that. And how to remember? Well, that's the project. But in time, it ceases to be a project because love takes over. And as it does so, then we're not thinking about duty. We're not thinking about, the austerities of the path and all of that. When you're in love with God, when the joy is present, then you think, my God, I'm so happy that I persevered. And when I see people come to Ananda, I have this one thought. If this is yours, if this is your family, then stick to it like a dog sticks to a bone. Maybe another image would be better. With every ounce of your strength, through thick and thin, through storm, through trial. That's all that's required. Hold on to the Guru's feet. Hold on to God. And you'll pass on through all of these tunnels. And in time, come to the other side. So Lahiri Mahashaya shared with us a most encouraging statement. Making, someday made. And that's what it's about. Making, someday made. And so, thank God, as Yogananda said, he attracts stubborn people. Because that is really, really one of the top qualities. There's a few others, but that's one of the top qualities. This tenacity that we know what we want. And now that that seed of liberation has been planted within us, it has to bear fruit. And so, again, a happy rest of the year to you. We're almost half done. I'm always giving this report, aren't I? Okay, tick, tick, tick. This year is roaring on by, make the most of it. So that really, when we come to 2017, we can say this was a good year. I really knocked out some habits that were, creating, turmoil for me. I opened my heart. I'm feeling more compassionate. Very good. And I consider all of this God's grace, because truly it is. So, God bless you, and we will have our arati.